Well, thank you very much. It's been an interesting day from the standpoint of news. As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
Hey, Don, heard you stole a tanker now. Well, all right. As you saw in our opening clip, old Dozy Don awoke from another one of his signature naps just long enough to inform us that the United States military has seized a Venezuelan oil tanker. And in true low-energy fashion, the mob boss of the MAGA mafia mumbled on about the size of the boat and how it was the biggest boat ever seized. It's kind of like bragging about robbing a bank because it was the biggest bank ever. Many people said it was the biggest bank they've seen in years. They keep all their money there. It's tremendous. It's fantastic. You know, when it comes to ocean-going vessels, among other things, Trump ain't exactly a reliable authority on size. As a matter of fact, considering Trump's ample belly, he ain't seen his own dinghy in years. Also, did you notice how unexcited Trump was about the whole ordeal? My Mrs. Sheepain, she gets more excited when the property tax bill shows up. Now, it appears Trump has committed so many war crimes and violations of international law that it's just another day at the office. I'm going back to sleep now. Wake me up in case we blow something else. When asked by reporters later, Trump didn't know the name of the boat, who owned the boat, or where the boat was headed. That seems like stuff you ought to know before creating an international incident. Don't you reckon?
We've been following details as the Trump administration announced today that the U.S. seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. This comes as tensions continue to mount with the government of President Nicolas Maduro. Reuters saying that U.S. forces seized this tanker in an incredibly unusual move. It marks the Trump administration's latest push to increase pressure on Maduro.
Well, look at there. Trump does know how to seize a boat without blowing it up first, provided it's loaded down with oil. Remember how Trump keeps justifying all these extrajudicial activities by claiming it's all about drugs pouring into America from Venezuela? Funny thing is, in one breath, Trump claims the borders are totally shut down. Nobody's getting in. But then he turns around and says that drugs are pouring into our country. And sadly, in the MAGA brain, both things can be true. Now, I've begun to wonder if there were actually any drugs on them boats that they've been blowing up. Because you know if there was, old Don Jr. would be out there claiming salvage rights. So let's face facts, folks. This ain't never been about drugs. It's about the same old Republican wet dream, oil and power. Killing brown folks is just a bonus. And let me add to that saying this. If Trump was really interested in drug boats, all he'd have to do is go on a fishing trip with some of his voters over Labor Day weekend. So let this sink in, folks. The guy who campaigned on getting us out of these foreign entanglements just commandeered the largest military in the history of forever, and without congressional authority and in clear violation of international law, seized the property of another sovereign country. World wars have been started over less. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have conspired to transform the brave men and women of our military into the worst sequel of the Pirates of the Caribbean ever. Thanks to Dozy Don and old Pete Kegsbreath, our military is now no different than the Somali pirates. That is, if the Somali pirates had an $874 billion budget and cool matching uniforms. Now, thinking about it, after I made that comparison to Trump and the Pirates of the Caribbean, I'd like to apologize to Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp is much more mentally stable.
And it's very emblematic of what they call this unfortunate session of Congress, the do-nothing Congress, the least productive Congress in modern times.
Well, not to worry. As soon as the Republican-led Congress found out about the Venezuelan tanker, they sprang into action, doing exactly what they always do. Nothing. These cowards are so scared of getting mean tweeted by Grumpy Gramps, they proceeded to immediately soil themselves and hide themselves under their desks. Now, sure, we keep hearing talk about how they are privately concerned, but until some of them scaredy cats find their man parts, they're about as useless as a pair of breeding mules. Now, we're starting to hear reports that as many as 20 Republicans may not run for re-election due to the imminent blue tsunami headed the Republicans' way. So here's a thought. If these principled Republicans really wanted to stop Trump, it would only take 4 or 5 of them resigning early to return the House to the Democrats so they could start firing off subpoenas and initiating impeachment proceedings of these war criminals. If these 5 or 6 Republicans wanted to do something, all they'd have to do is nothing. Sometimes I tend to get a little pie in the sky about all this, but Republicans need to face the fact that surrendering to Trump might not be a safe strategy. After all, we learned this week about 2 men that tried to surrender to Trump, and how did that turn out? Yeah, like that. Now, speaking of war crimes, almost every military analyst asked to comment on all this aquatic pyrotechnic nonsense has called Trump and Hex's extrajudicial shenanigans exactly what they are: war crimes. And you know who else thinks it's a war crime? The Trump administration. As a matter of fact, they are so certain of it, they have threatened to sanction the International Criminal Court unless they pledge not to investigate Trump. Think about that for a minute. Trump is so corruptly brazen, or brazenly corrupt, your choice, that he's abusing his power as president to keep a court from investigating him for abusing his power. Now, that's what them scientists call consciousness of guilt, and Trump ain't even trying to hide it. This week, we saw what happens when men surrender to Trump. We're also seeing a Congress that has totally surrendered as well. Mark T. Payne's words, the acquiescence of this Congress will not escape the watchful eye of history. And make no mistake about it, this ain't merely the destructive fantasies of some random 8-year-old. There's a bigger plan at play here, and what we're seeing is this. Day by day, with a spineless media in cahoots, the Trump administration is slowly normalizing and legalizing using the military against Trump's foreign enemies. After all, who really cares if a couple of drug boats gets blown up 1,000 miles from our shore? It don't really affect us, right? And now that we've accepted that, Trump seizes a tanker of oil from some country that has little effect on the average American, but it's an escalation nonetheless, and the military is right in the thick of it. Now, once this has been accepted and normalized, what's to stop him from turning the military on his own domestic enemies? Now, normally I like to end these videos with a little joke or a snarky little quip, but there's a little humor to be found here. Make no mistake, Trump's illegal acts this week are just spring training for the midterms. Given that the Democrats are outperforming Republicans by 10 to 20 points, even Trump's gerrymandering efforts look to fall short of holding the House, and Trump has no desire of being held accountable by a Democratic Congress. These drug boats and tanker seasons are nothing but Trump setting the stage to use the military for a more nefarious endgame. So stay alert, stand firm, and start organizing for next November. Now, all this being said, support one another, love one another, treasure your friends and your family, and most importantly, have a Merry Christmas. T-Pain out.